Every sports league has something it chooses to protect. Sometimes it prioritizes player safety, sometimes it focuses on protecting the business side of the game, and occasionally those two priorities collide in ways that fans can no longer overlook. Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA and immediately changed the landscape of the league. Her impact extended far beyond her performances on the court. She helped bring the WNBA into mainstream sports conversations at a level never seen before, driving television ratings, ticket sales, sponsorship revenue, and nationwide interest in women's basketball. At the same time, Clark became one of the most physically targeted players in the league. For nearly 2 seasons, concerns about the amount of contact she absorbed received little attention. Then a series of 3 fouls led to an official warning being issued to the Indiana Fever, prompting many fans to ask a difficult question: who exactly is the league protecting? Tonight, we are examining the warning issued by the league, the ongoing physical treatment Clark has faced, the possible MVP implications, and whether the WNBA has treated Caitlin Clark fairly. Before we begin, here is a quick question for viewers. At the time the warning was issued, how many technical fouls did Caitlin Clark have? Was it 1, 2, 3, or 4? Keep your answer in mind, and we will reveal it later. To understand the situation, it is important to look at what the warning actually said and what it did not say. The WNBA issued an official notice to the Indiana Fever citing concerns regarding player conduct. The primary reason was Clark's accumulation of fouls during the opening stretch of the 2026 season. The incidents in question included a technical foul against the Los Angeles Sparks, a second technical foul that occurred during a confrontation with Golden State Valkyries forward Janelle Salon just before halftime, and a flagrant 1 foul from the same game after a hard screen was upgraded following an official review. So what was the answer to the quiz? The correct answer was 2 technical fouls, combined with 1 flagrant one. Those were the 3 incidents that contributed to the warning. All 3 were officially documented and recorded by the league. However, context matters. The first technical foul came during an intensely physical game in which Clark was dealing with heavy contact throughout the night. Technical fouls are often subjective decisions made in real time, based on language, gestures, or reactions that officials determine have crossed a line. 1 technical foul early in a season is hardly unusual for a competitive player. For someone with Clark's profile, the league's most closely guarded player and the biggest attraction in women's basketball, it barely seemed newsworthy. The second technical foul deserves a much closer look. During a game against the Golden State Valkyries, Clark and Janelle Salon became involved in a physical exchange following a loose ball play. The situation escalated verbally, resulting in both players receiving technical fouls. During that same sequence, Salon appeared to throw an elbow in Clark's direction, a moment clearly visible on the game broadcast. Despite the contact and replay evidence, both players received matching technicals and no further disciplinary action was announced against Golden State. The technical fouls effectively closed the matter from the league's perspective. The flagrant 1 foul may be the most revealing incident of all. What began as a hard screen in a physical contest was reviewed by officials and eventually upgraded. After the game, Clark addressed the situation calmly during her media availability. She estimated that the fines connected to the 3 incidents totaled around $1,000. She did not complain, criticize officials, or portray herself as a victim. Instead, she acknowledged the outcome and moved on. That leaves us with 3 incidents, roughly $1,000 in fines, and an official warning issued to the Indiana Fever. Yet one question remains unanswered. If the warning was truly about player conduct and foul accumulation, why did the communication appear to move in only one direction? Clark was cited for her actions, but Golden State's defenders spent the game applying constant physical pressure. Sophie Cunningham later shared images showing marks on her face, while Clark herself left the court with visible scratches on both arms. The elbow incident involving Salon was broadcast for everyone to see. Despite all of that, the warning was directed at Indiana. Naturally, many observers began wondering whether any similar communication was sent to Golden State. To fully understand the debate, it is necessary to look beyond a single game. Throughout the 2024 and 2025 seasons, Clark consistently ranked among the most fouled guards in the WNBA relative to her usage rate. She absorbed contact at an extraordinary level while often receiving fewer foul calls than comparable star guards across the league. Those statistics fueled an ongoing conversation about officiating standards and player protection. The moment that drew the most national attention was the hard foul involving Clark and Kennedy Carter, but for many fans, that play was only one example in a much larger pattern. Whether the league agrees with that assessment or not, the discussion surrounding Caitlin Clark, physical play, and competitive fairness continues to grow with every season. This discrepancy was publicly highlighted by analysts and discussed extensively across basketball media, yet the league never directly addressed it in any official statement. Over time, opposing teams began designing defensive strategies specifically to disrupt Caitlin Clark because game footage repeatedly showed that the approach worked, while the lack of meaningful consequences suggested there was little risk involved. This is not merely a fan-driven narrative, it is a pattern supported by 2 full seasons of documented basketball. For 2 consecutive years, the physical targeting of Clark became so consistent and so visible that it evolved into a recognized strategy throughout the league. The evidence appeared in game film, injury reports, and statistical records. One of the most notable indicators was the number of games Clark was forced to miss due to injuries. Missing 31 games in a single season is a staggering figure. That amount represents more than half of a professional basketball schedule and reflects the physical toll accumulated over months of constant contact. Multiple soft tissue injuries during a single season raised further questions about player protection. Without a strong deterrent from officials or the presence of teammates capable of discouraging excessive physicality, opponents frequently employed the same tactics. Defenders grabbed her wrists as she received passes, bumped her off screens, and delivered heavy contact on drives to the basket. These actions were rarely hidden. They occurred openly in arenas across the country because teams believed the strategy was effective and the consequences remained minimal. Perhaps the most discussed example involved a landing zone violation that prevented Clark from completing her shooting motion safely. The incident was captured on video, analyzed by commentators, and replayed across major sports networks. Despite the widespread attention, no formal warning was issued to the opposing franchise and no public statement emphasized the importance of protecting players in those situations. As a result, many observers felt there was little incentive for teams to alter their approach. The debate intensified following Indiana's matchup against the Golden State Valkyries. Throughout the game, Clark displayed visible scratches and marks from the physical contact she endured. Teammate Sophie Cunningham even shared images on social media showing injuries she sustained during the same contest. One particularly controversial moment occurred when Janelle Salon appeared to swing an elbow toward Clark's head during a nationally televised game. Multiple replay angles clearly captured the sequence, yet the official response amounted to matching technical fouls for both players. After 2 seasons of similar incidents, numerous missed games, recurring injuries, and ongoing discussions about player safety, many fans found it surprising that the first major warning issued by the league was directed toward Indiana following Clark's accumulation of 3 fouls early in the 2026 season. For critics, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Years of physical play resulted in no team warnings for opponents, while a handful of fouls from Clark led to immediate league action. Understanding that reaction requires examining the difference between technical fouls and flagrant fouls. The distinction is significant because the league's warning was based on incidents that fall into separate categories. Technical fouls generally involve unsportsmanlike conduct, including language, gestures, or reactions that officials determine have crossed an acceptable line. These calls are inherently subjective. 2 referees can witness the same interaction and reach different conclusions about whether a technical foul is warranted. Flagrant fouls, on the other hand, are defined by unnecessary contact that exceeds what is required to make a legitimate basketball play. Clark's flagrant one resulted from a hard screen that officials reviewed and ultimately upgraded. The decision indicated that league officials believed the contact went beyond what was necessary, but it remained fundamentally different from actions such as elbows or direct blows to the head. When those incidents are compared with the treatment Clark received during the same game, questions naturally emerge. Defenders consistently applied physical pressure throughout the contest, making every possession a battle. Broadcasters repeatedly highlighted the contact, while viewers watched visible marks accumulate on Clark's arms and body. The elbow incident involving Salon received significant attention, yet the final disciplinary outcome mirrored the technical foul assessed to Clark. This comparison fuels much of the ongoing debate. Clark's flagrant one originated from a stationary offensive action that was judged too aggressive after review. The elbow sequence involved an entirely different type of contact, one directed toward the head area of the league's most recognizable player. Despite those differences, both situations received similar treatment during the game, while only one side ultimately became part of a broader league warning. Supporters of Clark often ask a simple question: if the roles had been reversed, would the response have been the same? If Clark had been the player making the aggressive motion, would the outcome have ended with matching technical fouls, or would further discipline have followed? While there is no definitive answer, the question continues to drive discussion among fans, analysts, and media personalities. At the center of the conversation is a larger issue. When people review the totality of the events, the physical play, the visible injuries, the controversial moments, and the league's official response, they inevitably wonder what priorities are guiding those decisions. That discussion becomes even more significant when considering Clark's influence on the league itself. Since entering the WNBA, Caitlin Clark has become one of the most impactful figures in the history of professional women's basketball. Television ratings surged, attendance records were challenged, larger venues were utilized, and sponsorship opportunities expanded dramatically. Her presence helped bring unprecedented attention to the sport and introduced millions of new viewers to the league. Because of that influence, Clark represents more than just a player. Fans are drawn to stories that inspire them to fall in love with the sport. Those stories are clean, easy to market, and highly valuable from a business perspective. They help sell television rights, sponsorship packages, merchandise, and arena partnerships. The version of Caitlin Clark that fits perfectly into that narrative is the generational superstar elevating women's basketball to unprecedented heights. The version that creates challenges for that narrative is different. It is the Caitlin Clark who collects technical fouls, becomes involved in heated exchanges, and competes with an edge that occasionally sparks controversy. It is the Clark who responds emotionally in intensely physical games against teams determined to disrupt her rhythm. That version is far more difficult to present as a simple marketing success story. It raises questions that leagues, sponsors, and executives may prefer not to answer publicly. This is what makes the warning issue to Indiana such an interesting development. For many observers, the discussion extends far beyond 3 fouls. It touches on the broader image that the league wants to project. The ideal scenario is a superstar who gracefully handles every challenge while remaining above the conflict around her. The reality of professional sports, however, is often far messy. Players face physical pressure, emotional confrontations, and competitive situations that test their composure. Many fans see a disconnect between the polished image often presented to the public and the physical reality Clark experiences on the court. They see a player enduring heavy contact, leaving games with visible scratches and bruises, and still being expected to remain the perfect ambassador for the sport. Whether that expectation is fair or not remains a matter of debate, but it has become an increasingly important part of the conversation surrounding her career. The league has spent years introducing Clark to audiences that previously paid little attention to women's basketball. Those new fans arrived expecting to watch elite competition. What they discovered was a more complicated environment in which the league's most recognizable player was also one of its most physically challenged. They noticed the hard fouls, the confrontations, and the controversies. More importantly, they noticed how those incidents were handled. That audience is paying close attention. Casual viewers may not study advanced statistics or league policies, but they recognize patterns when they see them. When official disciplinary actions appear to move in one direction while other incidents receive little attention, questions naturally emerge. Those questions are not limited to dedicated basketball fans. They are being asked by many of the new viewers the league has worked so hard to attract. From a public relations standpoint, the challenge is not simply that Clark accumulated fouls. The challenge is that the broader pattern has become visible enough for everyday fans to discuss it openly. Whether people agree with that interpretation or not, perception plays a major role in professional sports, and perceptions are often shaped by consistency. There is also a business side to the conversation. Television networks, sponsors, and corporate partners have invested heavily in the growth of women's basketball. Much of that growth has coincided with Clark's arrival and the attention she brought to the league. Increased ratings, larger crowds, and stronger sponsorship opportunities have transformed the financial outlook of the WNBA. Because of that reality, Clark occupies a unique position. She is not only one of the league's best players but also one of its most valuable commercial assets. Every storyline connected to her carries implications that extend beyond basketball. A player viewed primarily as an inspirational superstar is easier to market than a player constantly surrounded by controversy, disciplinary discussions, or physical altercations. Understanding that financial context helps explain why every incident involving Clark receives extraordinary attention. It is not only about sportsmanship or league discipline. It is also about protecting the image of a player who has become central to the league's rapid expansion and public visibility. While debates about image, marketing, and public perception continue, the practical consequences of the warning are impossible to ignore. Technical fouls carry real disciplinary implications. Under league rules, players who accumulate too many technical fouls can face automatic suspensions. For a highly competitive player like Clark, every technical foul matters. This creates an interesting challenge for opposing teams. Defenders do not need to cross the line to place pressure on Clark. They simply need to make every possession difficult. By crowding her space, contesting every movement, and forcing physical battles throughout a game, opponents can test both her skill and her emotional discipline. Clark's competitive fire is one of the reasons she became a generational talent. The same passion that fuels her success can also lead to moments of frustration in highly charged situations. As a result, Indiana's off-season roster additions now appear even more valuable than originally expected. When the Fever added veteran forward Natasha Howard and versatile players such as Myisha Hines-Allen, many fans focused on their basketball contributions. Those additions, however, provide something equally important: experience, toughness, and leadership. Veterans understand how to manage emotional situations and prevent conflicts from escalating. That value became especially noticeable during physical matchups throughout the season. Whenever tensions increased, experienced players were often among the first to step in and defuse situations before they grew larger. Their presence allowed Clark to remain focused on the game itself rather than becoming distracted by confrontations. Sophie Cunningham provides a similar influence. Throughout her career, she has built a reputation as a fearless competitor willing to stand up for teammates. Combined with Hines-Allen and the rest of Indiana's veteran core, she helps create a support system that did not always exist in previous seasons. The impact of that support should not be underestimated. Every tense moment handled by a veteran teammate is one less opportunity for Clark to become involved in an exchange that could lead to additional technical fouls or disciplinary consequences. In that sense, roster construction becomes part of player protection. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of the entire situation has been Clark's response. Rather than turning the warning into a public controversy, she acknowledged the penalties, accepted the consequences, and shifted her attention back to basketball. That approach reflects maturity and a focus on winning rather than distractions. Indiana appears determined to keep that focus where it belongs. With improved depth, stronger veteran leadership, and one of the league's most talented young cores, the Fever looks significantly more complete than they did a year ago. Aaliyah Boston continues to develop into one of the premier frontcourt players in the league. Cunningham brings toughness and experience. Hines-Allen adds versatility and leadership. Clark remains the engine driving everything forward. The bigger question now is how opponents choose to respond. Will teams continue testing Clark physically and emotionally, knowing Indiana has experienced veterans ready to step in? Or will they focus entirely on traditional basketball strategies designed to slow her scoring, passing, and long-range shooting ability? Neither option is particularly appealing. If defenses become overly physical, Indiana's veteran leaders are prepared to respond. If defenders provide more space, Clark has already proven she can control games with her unique offensive skill set and elite playmaking. That is why the warning could ultimately produce consequences nobody anticipated. Rather than weakening Indiana, it may reinforce the importance of the roster moves the Fever made around their superstar. The MVP race is becoming more competitive, championship expectations continue to rise, and every game involving Caitlin Clark is attracting enormous attention. As the season progresses, one thing is certain: the spotlight surrounding Clark is only growing brighter. Every performance, every confrontation, and every league decision will be analyzed in detail. The warning may have been intended to reduce controversy, but for many fans it has done the opposite by raising even more questions.